Ladies and gentlemen of the world, as you probably all know, my name is Zach Jones. Before I have showed you all a PowerPoint presentation on animals that are at risk of extinction, but this time I thought I would give you all a presentation on my all-time favourite animal, the Peregrine Falcon. This is the animal that has been one that I've been most passionate, fascinated, enchanted and bordering on obsessed with ever since I was a boy. But here I will tell you all about the facts I know about this bird. I hope you all enjoy. Right, here we go. Now, what is a peregrine falcon? Well, peregrines are found all over the world because they are in the falcon family, but of course in Britain they're mostly found in like cities and like rugged mountainous parts of the country, and they are the fastest creature that has ever lived, ever. Full stop. And when I say fast, I mean they dive at well over 200 miles per hour, so they are faster than any living animal. And of course to me, they are the most incredible creature on the planet. And they are, next I'm going to tell you, where do they live? Well, peregrines are found in a wide range of habitats. I mean, a more natural backdrop for them would be somewhere wild, rugged and cliff-faced, perhaps at the coast, or maybe somewhere like Cheddar Gorge, but over the last few decades, they have recently adapted to live in cities, and of course it's actually been shown by ornithologists that peregrines in cities are a lot more successful than their rural counterparts. In fact, and you may wonder why they choose to live in cities. I mean, the first one is buildings, like skyscrapers provide home for them. And it's a place where they can raise their chicks, but also where they can have a bird's eye view of their territory. And the second thing is their number one food of choice, pigeons. Because these birds flock to city centres because of the amount of scraps there are left. And of course, they are the peregrine's number one food of choice. And of course, over the last few decades, they've learnt to adapt. And of course, in England, in fact, in the city of London, we have the second largest population of urban peregrines, of over 30 pairs breeding, which is actually quite incredible. Now, what do they eat? Because peregrines only hunt birds that hunt other birds, because they don't hunt things like rabbits and other mammals, but they feed on crows, pheasants, grouse, seabirds and waterfowl, but of course their favourite food of all is pigeons. Of course, they have to go catch them by dropping right out of the sky towards them. And of course, on the flat, a pigeon can outfly a peregrine because pigeons can fly at 61 miles per hour and they have incredible stamina, so they can outpace them on the flats. But I'll get back to that later. Of course, if peregrines are living by the coast, and then they tend to hunt things like gulls, gannets, puffins, cormorants, and all sorts of seabirds. But if they're living near water, then they mostly hunt waterfowl like ducks and geese. And of course, they have been known to quite occasionally take prey as big as herons, which is very incredible. Of course, next thing is, what threats do they face? I mean, of course, from the 18th century, the peregrine had been targeted by gamekeepers. And of course, persecution continued right into the 20th. And during World War II, many peregrines in the UK were killed by the order of Parliament because they posed a danger to carrier pigeons, carrying vital messages to the Allied forces. And while I did agree that the pigeons that were carrying messages needed to be protected, that's one of the reasons why I still dislike Parliament. But Also, in the 1950s, peregrines were the birds that were most affected by the pesticide known as DDT. Of course, that pesticide was introduced into the food chain, and it affected birds of prey by thinning their eggshells. And peregrines, of course, were very badly affected, and their numbers dropped dramatically. However, after the banning of DDT, numbers began to increase, of course, and it's actually incredible of how much of a comeback they've made over the years, because when my mum was a teenager, you had to go to the wilds of Wales to see them. But also, they still face threats today with gamekeepers and even pigeon fanciers, who are people that want peregrines killed because they think pigeons should be left alone. But also, people who care for pigeons quite often dislike them because they kill them because they hunt their pigeons. But also, egg thieves are a main threat to these birds. It's because peregrine eggs are quite often stolen for their eggs to be sold, and one of the main reasons for that is for the demand for peregrines from Middle Eastern falconers. But there have been efforts to protect them with the RSPB. Many of their nests are now monitored by wardens, and anyone caught stealing eggs or young will end up with a criminal conviction. Next thing you've probably been all wanting to know is, how does a peregrine hunt? Well, because peregrines are birds that catch their prey on the wing, so they can't pin their prey to the ground like other birds, so they need speed, which is their secret weapon. And the higher they climb, and they climb very high, quite often they actually go right in front of the sun, so their prey can't see them, and then they drop out of the sky like a bullet. And of course, when they dive at 200 miles an hour, airflow rushes into the nostrils and it could explode its lungs, but they have special cones inside their nostrils that slow down the air rush before it hits the lungs. And believe it or not, this design is so effective, it's now used in jet engines. And of course, once they've locked onto their prey, which is usually a pigeon, and just at the moment before impact, they swing their talons forward and bang! Of course, if the initial strike doesn't kill the pigeon, then if the pigeon is still alive, then they go for the neck using their beak. They use it to basically dislocate the neck, but that's only if the pigeon has not been killed by the initial strike. But unfortunately, despite their speed, they don't have a very good strike rate, with only 1 in 5 hunts, or 20% of their attacks, ending in a kill. But peregrines are quite successful birds, and and when they are raising young, they have to catch at least 2 pigeons a day for a month, which can be quite a challenge. Now, a little bit about me and why this bird has fascinated me so much. The peregrine I first came across, one of these birds, when I was about 6 years old, when I was at the Battle of Tintagel reenactment event with my father down in the south of England. And I came across a falconer who I've seen at many reenactment events over the years. He runs a group called Raptor Care, and when I first saw the peregrine, it just completely took my breath away. And when I actually got to hold a peregrine on my fist, I was just absolutely bewitched by this bird. I mean, from its plumage, like how beautiful it is, but also the fact that they are the fastest creatures on the planet has been one of the reasons why this bird has been my favourite animal for all of my life, really. And of course, I've studied this bird for many years, and in fact up in Hanley, close to where I live, there's actually a population, well, a breeding pair, and quite often I see them in the spring. but I have also recently seen a peregrine at Newcastle under Lyme. I think it's nesting on the cathedral just across from Lidl. I actually saw it carrying a pigeon there to feed on it. And more incredibly, a few years ago, about 10 years in fact, I was at Belper in Derbyshire and I got to see a pair of peregrines with their youngsters that were learning how to fly. I saw their family dynamic, I even saw one of them feeding, and it was one of the greatest bird watching experiences of my life. As I've always been passionate about this bird for all of my life. Of course, where can you see them in the wild? Many of you might be thinking. But of course, in Britain, you can see them in many habitats. I mean, one of the best places to see a peregrine in its natural habitat would be Cheddar Gorge, just down south of England. And also, they are nesting in many cities throughout the planet. And of course, one of the best places to see them in Britain, in a city, is here in London. And of course, another fact that I forgot to tell you about the peregrine is that I do apologise for that. Anyway, another fact I forgot to mention about the peregrine was that these birds were actually one of the most common that were used in falconry back in the medieval era. In fact, it was the male peregrine was flown by the squire, and the female was flown by the prince. Of course, that's another reason why these birds have amazed me so much throughout my life. But because I've seen peregrines in natural, rugged backdrops and also in urban cities, and to me they are the most incredible creature that has ever lived, and I hope that I have been able to interest you all in this video, and if I have, then please drop a comment down below, but also don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye.